Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, you need to unmute your microphone.
Am I visible now?
Now visible, ma'am, and audible also.
Okay, great. No,
Good morning.
good morning, Prabha. You must be so busy, managing all of us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am, for accepting our
Not at all.
invitation.
But I peeped in the, I just want to see, just my mic and the video and all of that. So I thought, and I forgot. I thought it was at 11 and not 11:15. I'm getting very absent-minded, Prabha. So I thought, let me adjust the camera, and that's. Why is this message coming again and again that the meeting is being recorded?
No, I had stopped recording, and now I'm going to introduce you. So I started the recording.
All right. So it's okay if I dwell a little on the philosophical, historical antecedents of the study of language. Is it all right?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, because I would like to convey something of the excitement of language, because it's a mixed bag, right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Sure.
Okay, allow me to introduce the today's speaker of this session. So with us in this session, we have Professor Rohini Mukashil Punekar, who is a professor and former chair at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. Besides several scholarly papers, she is the author of On the Threshold, Song of Chokhamela, published by Altamira Press 2005 and the Book Review Literary Trust 2002, Untouchable Scents and Indian Phenomenon, Manohar Publishers 2005, which she co-edited with Eleanor Zeliot and Vikram Seth, and the other book is Vikram Seth, an Introduction, published by Cambridge University Press 2008. She is currently engaged in translating medieval Warkari poetry from Marathi, an anthology of which will be published by Penguin in their Black Classics series, and Jyoti Rao Phule's play Tritiya Ratna to be published by Orient Black Swan. Thank you very much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Prabha. So how do I, yeah, okay. So there is a share screen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. I hope I'm audible and visible to all of you. And
Yes, ma'am.
Before I share my screen, I would request one or two of the participants to put their videos on so that I get an impression of looking at faces and people instead of an invisible, community of people whom I can't see, or I'm sure I'll hear you later. Oh, hi, Manoj. Good to see you. Anyone else whom I can see? Hi, Manoj. Hi, Kavya. Hi, Simi. Yeah. Great to meet you all. I can see some trees behind Simi. That looks lovely. And Harini is here. Great to meet you, Harini.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Uh, so, oh yeah, hi, Harini.
Hello, ma'am.
Very nice to put a face to the faceless groups of people. I'm so glad you're all here. And Prabha, I mean, of course, I should call him Dr. Prabha Trivedi, but then, he's so much younger than I am.
No, it's all right. No problem at all.
So I feel much more, though I have never met him, in reality. I have virtually met him for some other work. And, I'm very fond of him because he's such a efficient and such a, cordial young person. Very nice. So I've taken the liberty of calling him by his first name. Prabha, when he invited me to this workshop and he said, you have 2 hours to speak, ma'am, I was dumbstruck because you see, the topic was academic writing, and it seemed to be a galaxy of people had been invited to speak on academic writing. And what in the world will I say that is different from the others? I was hard put to know this. And I generally do not do a PPT, but I managed to make slides for this presentation, which I thought would be useful for you. However, this morning when I peeped in just to check on my camera and my audio when the earlier session was on, I could see Professor Nagendra Kumar speaking exactly on the points that I had prepared. And so that, that left me even more, in a quandary, wondering what to do. But even before this, since I came to know from Prabha that this is going to be a mixed lot, that you are from very different backgrounds. I'm told some of you are from medicine, some from engineering, some from management, some from the social sciences, some from the humanities. And you're also at different stages of your academic career. Some, apparently, a few are PG students, a few doctoral students, but a large majority is also faculty already teaching, who have completed, who, I'm sure, your doctorate work, your PhDs. So your backgrounds are extremely mixed, in terms of disciplines, in terms of the different stages which you come from. And since this is the fact, and what joins, us today, through Prabha's invitation and through your, application for this workshop, wanting to do this workshop, what connects all of us together is actually two things. If you think about it, why in the world are you and all of us sitting together here, in different, distributed across different places, in different cities, but we are all sitting together. So what joins us together? The only one thing that joins us together is an interest in academics, an interest in producing knowledge. And the second fundamental thing that connects us is, of course, our understanding, our knowledge that it is language that is the focus of discussion today. It is language through which you will do your academic work. You have to express the knowledge found through the medium of language. We speak in language, so it is both written and spoken language that connects us. And because of a historical accident, because the English came and colonized us, we, people belonging to different languages are connected through the medium of the English language. We speak English language in our own way. I'm sure there is a, Tenglish. I'm sure there is a English. I'm sure there is a Tamlish. I'm sure there is a Mamlish. So the different languages of India contribute their own kind of cadences, their own vocabulary, their own inflection, syntax to the numbers of English spoken in India today. However, we are a large country. And even though the percentage of English speakers may be not very large, yet because we are simply so big in terms of numbers, even that small percentage, the estimates put it between 4 to 5 to 10% of people in India speak English. But even that tiny percentage translates into huge numbers, because we are, like that dialogue from the film Dawn 2, क्या है ना हम सब जगह होते हैं, that's what it is. We are everywhere. We Indians, we are so endemic. we are so populous that we translate into really large numbers. Now, before I share my screen and get on with the shop talk about academic writing, which is very important, I'm not denying its importance. I was fortunate enough to listen to a few minutes of Professor Nagendra's talk, and I could see it was an extremely interesting and useful lecture for all of you, and the comments that you left behind. So we will look into that, but part of it, and I'm sure yesterday's sessions also, many people have dealt with the very key issues. The title of my talk is Key Issues. So the important things about academic writing, I will also stress, I'm sure the others have done. But before I do so, however, as an introduction, and since I already began talking about language, I would like to convey to all of you my own excitement about language. Shall I put it that way? My own interest in, my own never to be erased, spark that any new word, swimming into the ken of my understanding brings to me. How that new word is used, whatever be the language. What is language in a sense? Has anybody talked about language as such, the philosophical foundations of language?
No, not yet, ma'am.
Not yet. All right. So what is language? Okay. And here I would like, to also have responses by you on what you think constitutes language. What is language? I mean, I know we speak different languages. I'm sure there are many Telugu speakers here. There are many Odia speakers, maybe Hindi speakers. I am completely bilingual in two languages, Marathi and Kannada, because I belong to the border district of Karnataka. In India, multilingualism is part for the course, right? We are all generally multilingual. But then there are different kinds of languages. But what is language? Would anybody like to think about it? And what do you think about language when you think of language?
Ma'am, in general language, like in a layman's word, we'll say that language is something through which you communicate. It could be your facial expressions as well, and just feelings as well, that how you communicate. Sometimes nobody says anything, but you do understand. That is also a language.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Anything through which we communicate, that falls into language.
That falls into language. And thank you so much, Kavya. And which background are you from?
Ma'am, I am from management background.
Oh, wow, Kavya. And you need to deal with language because management is all about communication.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
If communication fails, then how will you ever manage people, right? To manage people, you need language. Okay. Right. So people, thank you so much for that response, Kavya.
Thank you.
Kavya gave us a very, very useful understanding of what language is. Language is primarily a means of communication. We communicate.
Language is something that is a form of life.
Who's that? Harini, is it?
No, ma'am, not Harini. Alicia, ma'am. It was Alicia, I think.
Who spoke?
Alicia, ma'am, it's me, Alicia. I'm from philosophy background. I'm doing my PhD from Delhi University.
All right, Alicia, you are far advanced in the study of language. So, would you like to explain what you mean?
Ma'am, I was saying that it is a form of life, because we couldn't expect life without language. So somehow it is related to life.
Right, life itself. In a human life or any life?
Ma'am, any life, because I think everything has a different kind of definition while we are talking about language.
Right. So almost every being, okay, every sentient being, shall we say, every sentient being in the world, sentient that is conscious,
yes,
will have language. But the other day, Prabha, I'm sorry, I hope you'll give me some time for this free-floating kind of a lecture. This is how I generally do my classes. So I hope you'll permit me.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. No problem at all.
So just a couple of weeks back, I was watching this fantastic documentary on Netflix. I don't know how many of you are addicted to Netflix. During these times, I suppose all of us are. There was this very nice documentary, a very, very interesting and a very inspiring documentary called Fantastic Fungi. Depends on how you want to pronounce fungi. I would like to pronounce it as fungi, but the Americans pronounce it as fungi. It is Fantastic Fungi, which is actually talking about the life of fungi, how fungi, grow and how they interconnect. And apparently fungi grow beneath, on the ground. They have an entire network that spreads across the world. And these fungi speak to each other. In fact, the fungi also, communicate with the trees to whom they provide nourishment and who thereby are nourished in turn. So there is a language even in non-sentient living creatures. Fungi are, of course, living. So is language a function of all living creatures? We do not know. I mean, we need to sort of further look at this. More science is needed to understand this. However, as Alicia said, without language, there is no life, she said, in a very, very poetic, if I may say so, and rather cryptic remark, that life itself is connected to language. Let me just give you the example, which again from the newspapers, just a couple of days back, there's been an archaeological discovery. Some archaeological remains have been found in Tamil Nadu. I still haven't read up on that because archaeology is of perennial interest to me, but I do intend to do it over this weekend. They have discovered remains 3,500 years back. Material remains, right? What do I mean by material remains? Remains found of pottery, say, or metal, or maybe building bricks or whatever. 3,005 years back, right? I still do not know whether they have found in these remains anything that connects to language. Okay, but I can speak to you of another remains of another archaeological discovery that was made towards the beginning of the 20th century in the northwestern part of India, in today's Pakistan, in a place called Mohenjo-daro. I'm sure that rings a bell to all of us, whether we are medical doctors or social science doctors or humanities doctors, or indeed management doctors. So Mohenjo-daro. And we all know Mohenjo-daro means the mound of dead because we have done umpteen examinations where we filled in the blanks. Mohenjo-daro is the mound of dead. Now, Mohenjo-daro, once the discovery was made, right, of the remains and what is today known as the Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization, more and more excavations showed that there was an interconnected system of these archaeological remains, which were all connected to each other, much like the fungi, which I talked about, interconnected, expanse of these archaeological finds, right from Lothal in Gujarat up to present day Afghanistan, including Punjab and Pakistan. Today's Pakistan, right? Otherwise, it was one undivided India. Now, these discoveries, were very, very, what shall I say, they were bountiful discoveries. In the sense, they discovered bricks, they discovered walls, they discovered buildings, they discovered artifacts, they discovered daily items of daily use, they even discovered grain. So they knew what these people, ate. They discovered ornaments, bronze sculpture, pictures, all of that. They also discovered what is very intriguing, that is seals. And what are these seals? These seals were used to stamp goods, okay, packed goods, perhaps. These were seals that left an imprint. And the imprint of these seals was also collected, which we know as sealings. Sealings, sealings. So seals and sealings, seals, seals. Now these seals had some kind of marks on them. And since the early 20th century up to now, there have been philologists, linguists, literary people, today computer scientists, everybody trying to discover what those marks mean. Now, are those marks an indication of a language? All evidence seems to point towards that. They do seem to be an indication of language. And why do I say they're an indication of a language? Because these marks go in a linear direction, and towards the end, they seem to be jumbled up together, as if somebody began putting those marks and did not have enough space to complete it. So jumbled them up, brought them very close to each other. So anything that moves linearly has a connection amongst it, right? So there's a connection between these marks. And when there is a connection between these marks, it seems very much as if that it is a script. And this script then, therefore, indicates a language, right? A spoken language. But they haven't been able to decipher that script yet. Now, that script would give us great information about what exactly did that society, that Indus Valley civilization, which otherwise seems so sophisticated in terms of its material findings in terms of the way it built its cities, in terms of its drainage. I'm sure all of you have heard about the Great Danish System and the Great Bath. You know, they're very interested in, seem to be interested in having baths, right? A very hygienic society. The drains are much better than what you find in India today, in say maybe in Bihar or in Uttar Pradesh, right? So much better. So it's a very, very advanced, sophisticated civilization, a city civilization. You see, cities come into being much later in the evolution of human civilizations. You know, earliest are hunting gathering societies, then the pastoral societies, then the agricultural societies, and only when there's a surplus in the production of agriculture do you actually have cities, because cities are based upon that surplus production. Only when there's money that you can have cities. Now, why am I going on and on about the Indus Valley civilization? Because we have plentiful of data about the evidence in terms of material remains. We do not have any data about the language. If the Indus Valley speaks to us, we are deaf to it. We can't hear it. Okay, it is not silent, but we have not deciphered a way to understand it. On the other hand, the earliest set of texts that you find in India, and here I'm again zoning in on language and the excitement of language for me, the historical, I'll come to the philosophical aspects very soon, the historical aspects. The earliest set of texts that you find in India, of course, are the Vedas, the Rig Veda, whom, philologists will date to about 1000 BC, 1500 BC. That's where the Rig Veda is dated. But the Indus Valley civilization is dated back to at least 3000 BC. So that's why the importance of this find in Tamil Nadu. If it's 3500 BC, it means that it could be older than the Indus Valley civilization. Of course, some archaeologists put the Indus Valley civilization between, say, 700 BC to 300 BC, right? We do not know yet. The beginnings of it. And apparently it ended around 200 BC or so, the Indus Valley civilization. For what reason, we do not know. Was there a flood? Was there a drought? Was there some kind of an epidemic as we have been having now? We simply do not know how and why it ended, but we do know that it comes to an end at about 2000 BC. And the Rig Veda is dated to about 1500 BC. Now, the funny thing about the Vedic society is that the Vedic society is full of words. It speaks to us. And these words were not, of course, preserved in writing, in script. These words were preserved in oral memory. They were narrated from father to son and father to son. And because the Vedas were narrated in very, very defined metrical rhythm, those Vedas have not been corrupted, because the easiest thing for language is also to, management. Kavya spoke to us about that. She's from management. One of the exercises given in management group discussions is that one person at this end of the table whispers something to the next person, and you can be sure by this time that message has gone around and come around here, that message has been corrupted. Is it not so, Kavya? But then,
Chinese whisper, ma'am.
Sorry?
Chinese whisper.
Chinese whisper. Right. But the Vedas have not been corrupted. Apparently, in the 19th century, when the German philologists were interested in the Vedas, they got, a Pandit from north, a Pandit from south, west and east to recite the Veda, and they all were absolutely exactly the same, which means that the rhythm, the metrical cadence of the Vedas was not corrupted. Now, and only by the 5th century BC or so, the Vedas were put into, I might be mistaken by a century or so, but I think it's around the 5th century BC, the Vedas were, documented, retained in the form of script, written script. Now, why am I telling you all this? It's because, one has to understand. And of course, the Vedas, the Rig Veda has very, very strong affinities to the Zend Avastha, which is found amongst the Persians, and the Zend Avastha is an earlier text. There's a great similarity in terms of language, in terms of concepts. So the language of the Zend Avastha and the language of the Rig Veda are, cousins, almost the same. Not only the language, but also the concepts of different gods, Indra, Varuna, Agni, they all figure in the Zend Avastha. as they do in the Rig Veda, which then led philologists to propose the idea of the Aryan race, which believed that it was maybe the Aryans. And why are they called Aryans, guys? Anybody knows why are they called? Why do they propose the Aryan theory of race, which of course Hitler was to use much to great tragedy later on? Why is it called Aryan? Anyone? Any guesses? Well, it's very easy. It's called Aryan because the Rig Veda, the people of the Rig Veda, address each other as Arya. Okay, it's a Sanskrit word. Arya Putra, Arya Vrata. Okay, not because they spoke Aryan group of language. It is named Aryan. Aryan Datta, Arya Datta. No, Arya Datta. I'm very glad you replied. It is called Aryan because it is taken from a word in the Rig Veda, where these Rig Vedic people who address each other as Arya. Arya Putra, Arya Vrata. No, Arya is be the noble born, right? And based on this word, the philologists, the European philologists who were studying Sanskrit language, proposed a theory of the family of Indo-European languages, and the Proto-Indo-European people, which had apparently belonged to Central Asia, and maybe branches of those people had gone in different directions. And why did they propose that? Because they could see that Sanskrit and all languages emerging, the Indian languages, were very, very similar in structure and quite a lot of vocabulary to the European languages. So the theory was proposed that there's a joint family of Indo-European languages. You see, German syntax is very, very similar to Sanskrit syntax. Bhrata, brother, Pitra, father, pater in Latin. So there's a strong affinity between these languages. And therefore, the theory was proposed that there was one people who spoke this Proto-Indo-European language, then it's quite probable that branches of those people moved out towards Europe, and some branches came towards India, and that's how they were called Aryan, taken again from the Rigvedic word Arya. Right now, why I'm telling you all this is because I wanted to connect what Alisha said, that where there is life, there is language, right? She said, where there's, what did you say, Alisha? You said human language indicates life, right? So when you discover civilizations, the first thing you will note about those civilizations is the language that they either spoke or they left their records in, right? So this is as far as the history of language. Just a small, general little, what shall I say, excursion, a trip that I took you on through the beautiful, what shall I say, wooded scenery of languages to understand, how philologists approach the study of languages historically. But guys, looking at it philosophically, what is language? Okay, is language what I am speaking to you, right? Is language a medium, which Kavya said it's a mode of communication? Okay, so when I want to tell you something, I use these sounds to convey the meaning I want. Okay, is it as a mode of communication? Is language like a transparent pane of glass that I will use this word to indicate this meaning to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Harini, it is?
Yes, ma'am.
Transparent glass.
Yes. It connects two people. Language connects two people.
Right. So you are there on the other side of the glass and I am here and we see each other. Harini, is it? Right?
Yes.
We see each other and we can communicate through language. All right. Anybody else who has a different impression of language? Is it a transparent pane of glass? So I say, good morning, Harini, and Harini understands that I mean to wish her for the morning. Is it just a transparent pane of glass language?
Yes, ma'am.
It is?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah? right? Fine. Huh? Is it?
I think, ma'am, the language have many contexts. The tone and the context. Sometimes the subtext, we hide many things in language also.
Who was that speaking, please?
Sunil.
Sunil. Yeah, Sunil, thank you so much for speaking. So you say language has many connotations. Did you say that? And it has subtext, is what you said. And Sunil,
Yes, yes.
can you let us know which background are you from?
Mass communication.
Mass communication. Oh, good.
Yeah.
You are also dealing with language. So language has connotation. Language has a subtext. So Harini, when I asked you, is it? You said yes. When I said, is it? You were confused. Okay. So what does that mean, Harini? You're muted.
You are on mute, Harini.
You're on mute, Harini.
Your body language is also speaking, ma'am. When you said, is it, I was paused, right? Did I say correct or not?
Is it body language only?
Gestures.
Is it the tone of my voice?
Yeah, tone too.
Is it the different way I used my voice to say it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, these
It
all influenced me.
All those things, confused you? Okay.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
is language then merely a pane of glass, or is language more than that? Does language transparently communicate, or does language confuse? Also,
Ma'am, no. Ma'am, sometimes language don't, like if we are not talking and if we are just analyzing expression,
yeah,
and sometimes it communicates very differently.
right. It does.
If, yes.
Is
If
it only through tone of voice,
no,
Kavya?
no, ma'am, it's not the tone of voice, it's the prejudice of us as well, the how we perceive that person is saying.
That's
So I'll just give one example, ma'am.
Sure.
For example, I am a Punjabi, right?
Right.
So my
Right.
pitch is little high. So
Right.
many a time people think that I'm little, I'm annoyed, but actually I'm not annoyed. I speak that way. I'm not a very soft spoken person. So
Right.
this thing also adds to my language because
That's right.
somebody else, because that person is coming from a different background, he understands me very differently.
Right.
And but people who know me, they know that this is my normal tone and I don't speak very softly. So
Okay, Kavya. Okay. But then you see, this is exactly what
Ma'am,
Sunil was
sometimes
saying. So 1 minute, I'll just come to you. This is exactly what Sunil was saying, that language has a connotation. Language
yes,
has a subtext. But importantly, what you're saying, Kavya,
ma'am,
is that
sometimes I
language is associated with culture, right? So the
yes.
culture from which Kavya comes, that normally people will speak
ma'am,
in a
one
very
more thing I want
upfront
to add.
fashion. Sorry, I'm just coming to you. 1 minute. Huh? Just normally people will speak in an
Yes,
upfront
ma'am.
fashion, in a no holds barred fashion. That might get misconstrued in a culture where people are more inhibited about speaking, right? So language
Right.
is also associated with the culture. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. So somebody was speaking. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Who was that?
Ma'am,
Shilpa?
Shilpi.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. This is Shilpa. Ma'am, sometimes your voice quality also matter, I think.
Your voice.
If you are very voice quality, like if
Voice.
your voice is very sweet and you spoken very harshly, then sometimes don't even people understand that ki you are angry or not. Sometimes I think voice quality also matters.
Right. So the tone of the voice, right? The timbre
Voice
of the
quality
voice.
is
Whether you have
like
raised your voice or you're speaking softly, okay, that matters a
yes,
lot.
ma'am.
But sometimes something harsh, more harsh can be said by speaking softly than by raising your voice. Suppose you want to say something absolutely cutting, absolutely sarcastic, then you might use an extra soft tone of voice, okay, to convey your annoyance. Suppose I'm in a very large class, I'm taking a regular class, very, very large, and the kids are making a lot of noise because I get undergraduate kids, right? And at times I'm forced to drop my voice to absolutely pitch low, because then the kids will want, because there's no point in shouting them down by raising my voice. I use absolutely low voice, and I might say an absolutely, sarcastic thing that, oh, how wonderfully silent the class is. Let me speak very quietly, right? If I say that, and if the front benchers understand, what I'm really doing is I'm not stating a fact. Harini, please note here, it is not transparent. I'm not stating a fact. When I'm saying, oh, the class is so wonderfully quiet, let me speak very softly. What am I doing? I'm using my words to convey the exact opposite. Am I not? I'm using the word in fact in a very sarcastic manner to tell them how much of a noise they're making, and that they'll be forced to be quiet if they want to listen. Is that not it, Harini? So language here is not a transparent pane of glass. Language, in fact, is doing a very complicated thing. It's making a half joke, half, angry remark to the students, right? So this is what, so language is culturally affiliated. Language is dependent on the many uses that we might put it to, whether it's straight speak, whether it is a different, whether it's a joke, whether it is said in anger, right? It depends a great deal on how words are used in order to arrive at the meaning of those words. A word may mean one thing, but the way it is used may lend itself to a completely different meaning, right? Okay. So language is associational. Language has connotation. Language has a subtext. Language has cultural associations. Language also has individual traits to it. If, for instance, for me, a word may mean, happiness. My own individual understanding of language will also contribute to the common pool of meanings that we receive from society. So when we are born into a culture, and we are born into the language that the culture speaks. All your childhood in your school, even today, you must be told, please learn to use language correctly. But tell me, anyone, did you grow up learning your mother tongue because your mother made you sit and write down verbs or write down examples of tenses? Did you ever learn your original language that way? No, right, Kavya, right? We all learned our languages, our mother tongues, because they fell on our ears, because the people around us were using them, and because we instinctively picked up how to use a language, because it got hardwired into our brains. So what does that mean? That language is an intrinsic aspect of how your brain functions, how your brain works. Even as your body was developing, even as your brain was developing, the language you used, or the languages in the Indian context that you were exposed to, became a part of your brain apparatus. Okay. So is language out there, and do I use language to tell you what I'm thinking? Or is language an intrinsic part of my thinking process? Please understand. Okay. So if suppose I have a thought, do I put that thought in language and therefore present it to you? Or is it that my very process of thinking, because that languages are hardwired in my brain, the very process of thinking involve thinking through language. So in this case, language is not the medium alone. Language is also the tool, or is also why I think. Okay. Why I think? Maybe it's because I have a fund of languages already. Okay. And I'm building on that thought. Okay? So guys, let's come to semiotics and language. Okay. So somebody said language is communication, right? It is, of course, right? But when I'm saying it is, of course, what am I doing? I am producing certain sounds. And how are these sounds produced? Because my tongue moves between the top of my mouth and my teeth and my lips to produce certain sounds, right? Now, these sounds travel across to you, right? But before I make those sounds, something is triggered off in my brain that sends an impulse to my tongue that produces these sounds. Harini, please put your video on, or Kavya, somebody. Okay, I need a face. So the brain sends impulses, right? Yeah, thank you. I don't know who that is. Kavya, thank you. So the brain sends these impulses to my mouth and to my tongue, which produces these sounds to match whatever is happening in my brain. These sounds travel to you, and then the reverse process happens to you. These sounds fall on your ear, they travel to your brain, the code is broken into meaning in your brain, and you understand what I am saying. So what are sounds? Sounds are, and what are words? Words are nothing. What are sentences? Sentences are combination of words. These are combinations of sounds that connect to a meaning. In semiotics, it would be known as sign, signifier, and the signified. Okay, the sound is a sign which signifies, it's a signifier of something, and therefore what does it signify? It signifies the signified, which is the meaning, right? This is as far as speech is concerned. Now, what is language? Language can be seen, as you said, in forms of gestures, in forms, there is a tonal language, there's a gestural language, there's a language of the eyes, there's a language that animals use to communicate with each other. There's also, and most importantly, where human beings are concerned, there is speech and there is writing. And what is writing then? Writing also represents this speech. Obviously, we'll all know that speech comes first and writing follows, does it not? In the history of world evolution, you'll always know that it is speech that comes first. Now, just as the connection between the signifier and the signified. The signifier is the sound that I make. The signified is the meaning. Together they make one thing called a sign. Just as the connection between the signifier and the signified, what kind of a connection is it? Guys, tell me. Suppose I were to use the word dog, right? In English, it is dog. In Marathi, it is kutra. In Kannada, it is nine. In Hindi, it is kutta, right? What about Telugu? What is dog? What is dog in Telugu? I don't know, whatever it is, right? None of you is voluntary. So there is no intrinsic reason why it has to be dog in English, and why that word, when it is spoken amongst English speakers, should give you the picture of a four-legged animal with a wagging tail, right? The connection between the signifier and the signified is completely arbitrary. There is no reason in the world why this particular signifier, why this sound should bring to your mind a picture of that meaning, except the fact that since your childhood, you have been born into that language, you are born into a culture that has agreed that this sound will mean this particular thing, right? Do you get it? So language is nothing but a cultural, social pact, which is made in societies, that these arbitrary sounds that we use will mean these particular things. Can you imagine how a sophisticated system language is? How completely sophisticated that is, right? So this sophisticated system of signs divided into signifier and signified, remember, we have across all societies. And when you come to writing, what is it? That the script that you use, that each one of those, alphabets is also as arbitrary as the sound that you make. That why should that alphabet mean only that sound? Okay. Why should this sound mean only that word? And why should that word indicate only that meaning? Completely an arbitrary system. Now you see, this brings up to me, and let me then share my screen. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
But it is not on presentation mode, ma'am.
How do I put it on presentation mode?
Ma'am, there is a mark. Exactly, ma'am. You need to move your cursor towards the end where percentage is written, or you can use Control F5.
Is this the one?
Ma'am, it's written down. Notes, comments, right? Next, ma'am. Next.
Yeah.
There is a cup kind of a sign, ma'am. Next to.
So I have notes, then there's comments, and then there is
Then next, ma'am. Then two more next. Near to minus, ma'am.
Reading
The
view?
next one. Yes, this one.
Reading view.
Ma'am, next one.
I don't
Next.
want to put it on slideshow because it might keep going forward.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So is it all right if it's on this? Is it all right if it's on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So basically, having alerted you to the historical, the philosophical, and the linguistic aspects of language. Now, guys, you have any questions on these? Please feel free to ask me before I move in on the more regular presentation that I have for you, which is academic writing, etc., etc. Any questions that you have for me on what we have tried to do so far?
If someone has any question, can ask.
All right. If there are no questions, I just wanted to, establish for you all the arbitrariness of this medium, the system that you're dealing with, right? We need to understand this. We need to engage this. We need to enjoy this arbitrariness. We need to feel at home in the indeterminacy of language. Because this is to be something to be enjoyed, and this is what makes play possible. You see, riddles, proverbs, jokes are nothing but a play on language, and it is when you play on language that you are the most confident and relaxed users of language, right? So this will come to you only after a great immersion in that language, right? So I wanted to speak of these larger issues in order to convey my own excitement. As I said, I love languages. I've dealt with them all my life, and I thought there was no reason why I should jump straight into a fairly mundane topic as academic writing before sharing with you, what my own joy as far as language is concerned. And I'm very glad you've given me the permission to, I took it. I didn't ask you for it, and I took it, but I guess you also appreciated what I'm trying to do. That is open up our minds to understanding this vastness of what we are talking about before we zone in on the importance, the terrible, crucial need for academic writing. All of us in this group are academics. We are either aspiring to be well settled in our careers, or we're already in our careers and we want to do well. And we all know how important it is, not only because we want to do well in our careers, because getting a job, getting a promotion is all very important, but more than that, I think it's, as academics, we feel very strongly that we also want to make a mark in this scholarly world that we find ourselves in. And how best do you make a mark? You make a mark, of course, when you get invited to speak, of course, when you teach your students, of course, when the students enjoy your classes and get back to you with responses. But more importantly, you can make a more permanent mark when you write something, when you publish an academic paper, when you publish a book, and before you get on to that, when you do a very good dissertation thesis and it gets an excellent grade by examiners, or even if you're younger and if you're, as I'm told, there are some postgraduate students in this group, when you're a postgraduate student and you're submitting assignment, all of that is can be seen in the kind of writing you do, right? So academic writing is absolutely crucial. And we now, having looked at the vastness of what we are dealing with, the many implications and the many ways in which language can be studied, we are zoning in on our own small individual capacities and how best we can use language to express or to encode our own research findings, right? So in that sense, then the words that one uses, the sentences that one makes, really shows up the quality of your mind, right? How well your mind is able to think. As I told you, it's not as if there's language out there and then you represent your thought in language. It is because you have an excellent, source of language in your brain that you're able to think in a more precise and advanced fashion, right? So, so I think I've gone over quite a few of this. So, what is language? We looked at language as a kind of a system, maybe an arbitrary system of sounds, an arbitrary system of scriptural markings. And when it comes to writing, so language as both speech and writing, language as a system of science, which is what semiotics is. And then we also looked at exactly what is communication. How do we establish meaning through communication? What is the relationship between language and meaning? Does language, a word, mean what it means, or does it mean what I want it to mean? As I'm summarizing Alice in Wonderland, can I make a word to mean whatever I can want? In a way, a writer has a great deal of liberty in using words in very, very different ways in order to communicate a precise slant of meaning. So what exactly is the connection between language and meaning? Is it a straightforward connection? Is it a more indirect kind of connection? We have looked at all of this. This we did not look at, right? Meaning and reality. So meaning actually gives you an insight, a glimpse into the kind of reality which is expressed by a particular consciousness, right? So why do we enjoy reading novels? Why do we enjoy reading so many novels? Because each novel gives you a different kind of an impression of reality. That reality is seen in a slightly different way, in a slightly, what shall I say, in a way that you had never foreseen in a particular work of literature, or by a particular kind of a song, or in a particular poem, right? Every song that you hear, even though it may be a commercial Bollywood song, yet has the capacity to throw up a new image of a particular way of looking at the world. And that is what language does. So does language really show you reality, or does language construct reality? You see, is language, as I said, a glass pane that shows up what reality is, or does language show you a particular way of looking at what reality is? So this is what we did at the complexity of language before coming to academic writing and looking at what academic writing is. I've already gone over how important academic writing is for your careers, etc., etc. We have all done that. So what exactly then is academic writing? Does academic writing, does it merely present information? Does it organize information? Which it does. It also presents information. Excuse me, guys. It also organizes information, but more importantly, I think it analyzes information. And therefore, one could use this definition that the process of presenting ideas on a given topic in a rational, organized, logical, and of course, an analytic fashion is what is known as academic writing. So academic writing puts a very systematic, a very precise, concise way of thinking about a topic. And how is this topic thought of? This topic is thought of on the basis of several other studies which have been done on that topic, right? So it's actually climbing on the shoulders of others to find out what they have done, and enabled by those findings, you're going to be looking at a small little aspect or maybe a large aspect, which has not been studied hitherto, and which is going to be your contribution to this vast resource of knowledge that we in academics are trying to build up. It, of course, does this in a rational fashion, does this in an organized fashion, in a logical fashion. So your creative side can be there when you do an academic paper, but generally you keep that creative side slightly at abeyance, because what is more important here is your intellect, how you argue a point, how you logically connect those different points in your. So to read it again, the academic writing is a process of presenting ideas on any given topic in a rational, organized, logical, and analytic fashion. So what are the different kinds of academic writing? I guess all of us are familiar with that. It could be a research proposal that you might want to submit for your PhD thesis or your MPhil dissertation, or even for your book that you're planning to do. It could be a research report on particularly the social sciences, and the physical sciences, medical sciences will want a research report on the feasibility of certain experiments that they have done. It could be a scientific paper that again applies to the physical sciences and medical sciences, right? What exactly do you go out to study? It could be an essay, which we in the humanities try to write. It could be dissertation and thesis, and it could be an abstract that is submitting for a conference or to a journal, right? Now, largely, these are the different types of writing that we come across. There is the descriptive kind of style where you actually describe, the event or a particular thing or a particular phenomena. So it is at the descriptive level. It could be narrative when you're telling a story. And please do not think that academic papers do not use these kinds of writing. When you are describing the status quo, I mean, what is present, the situation, you will use partially descriptive writing. Even in the social sciences, you might want to narrate a story. I mean, narrating a story has become very, very popular in economics papers these days. I find I do read a lot of papers in economics, and narrating a story. Taking up the example of a particular person or a particular group of people to show their experiences in order to come at certain certain parameters to discuss them. This is also a very favorite kind of method used even in the social sciences to narrate something. And of course, creative writing, of course, will use narrative. Even in, of course, in literature also, we might narrate a certain thing. You might also want to persuade your readers, and so you could be persuasive writing. But largely, most academic writing will be argumentative, that you will argue a point. You will put forward a particular thesis, a particular point, and you will try to argue your way, create an argument, a framework of argument in which you will base that particular, question that you want to find out, that you want to have answers to. And what is the process in academic writing then? What is the process one follows? Of course, there's planning and approach. You plan for a, when you think that this particular thing is worth studying. For instance, suppose you want to look at, say, the impact of COVID on consumable items, on the consumption of consumables in this particular sector in India. Suppose it is this topic, then what do? You will plan how to do it. You will also plan how to approach that topic. What are the things you're going to define for yourself? Where exactly are you going to conduct the study? You will outline then for yourself the parameters, the circumference of that topic, and what exactly are you going to be focusing on, zoning in on. You will draft a particular paper, right? You will draft a body, a rough draft of the framework that you're going to be adopting. You will also, based on the data that you found, you will embark upon an analysis of all that data. But of course, when you're doing all of that, you will use a formal tone and language. It is not going to be a very informal or casual tone. It's going to be very formal. It's going to be formal language. And all this data that you're found by through means of secondary sources. So you will do a considerable amount of referencing. You will acknowledge the sources where you have taken some of those, the data from. And after you've all done all of that, this is something that every presentation presenter is going to tell you: revision, revision, and more revision. See, the revision is endless, where you're ready, in fact, even to abandon the main findings because you want to go over that entire first draft of your paper with a very, very critical eye, to look at it with a new eyes, to look at it very critically with new pairs of eyes. That's what revision means. You're going to be ready to redo any of those. And once you have done that, you will edit. What do you mean when you edit it? That you will check for the syntax, you will check for the grammar, you will check for the clarity, you will check for the appropriateness of the vocabulary, the words used, right? You will check if the sentences match up, are they syntactically correct? So editing is also a very, very, a deep process, which in fact can change your document quite considerably. And of course, proofreading to check, all the typos, the errors that must have crept in. Even a small write-up, a small paper of 8 to 10 pages will have innumerable number of corrections in terms of typos, the printer's devil, the punctuation, the capitalization. These errors can be so routine and so difficult to spruce up. You will be very surprised. I'm sure all of you have been when you've done your doctoral dissertations or your term papers, right? So this is the process. Let me just go over it in more in detail. So how do I plan this essay, right? So what is the answer to your question? So what is fundamentally the question that you're beginning? Suppose it's the impact. How did COVID impact the consumption of everyday consumables? If that's the question, then you will need to sort of what is the answer to it? Okay, how are you going to find those answers? What are the points you need that to support or give evidence to prove your answer? And what is the best order then to arrange these points? How are you going to connect between these two different points? How relevant are each of these points to your topic? Remember that each of these different points, which become the scaffolding of your argument, will become the main paragraphs of the body of your essay, right? And of course, you'll have to remember that you are arguing for your point of view. You're showing also that you're aware that such and such person has thought that this is not quite the case. Such and such a person has partially agreed with what you're finding. So there may be different positions on that particular question that you're trying to examine, but you will argue, you are aware of those other people and their positions on a particular thing, but you'll of course maintain your stance because from your finding, from your data, you have established that these are the findings, these are the conclusions that can be made. This is the interpretation of the data that you can achieve. Of course, I'm still sticking with that hypothetical topic about the impact of COVID on consumables, right? And suppose now, how do you plan the essay, right? And how do you organize the ideas, right? Of course, it goes without saying that there's a central question that the essay is trying to answer, right? For example, suppose I change my, the model question I gave you from COVID and try to get into advertisement, right? There are management candidates here. So what are advertising appeals and how are they effective, right? How exactly are these effective? So I might want to look at the efficacy of advertising a particular product. And I might want to investigate the effect of using different colors in advertising. Suppose it's an advertisement of Cadbury chocolate. Will the color brown dominate? The chocolate is brown. So do we want, and of course we know how chocolate is advertised, right? You have a lovely looking girl and then there she is eating the chocolate. So do we want her dressed in brown or do we want her dressed in red? What's the impact of these different colors in advertising? What are the different factors that would affect brand positioning? For instance, Cadbury vis-a-vis Hershey's, how would you position these different brands? And of course, all these theories in management which are there, the self theory on consumption, what's the effect of that? And very importantly, what is the cultural differences? How will this ad feel in India? How will this ad feel in Indonesia? How will this particular ad, have an impact in China, for instance? What is the cultural difference and the effect of all these different things on ads, consumption, consumer preferences, etc. For instance, many of these companies will do extremely involved product analysis based on cultural background. Suppose it's a very traditional kind of South Indian society. Now, how will this brand sell? And to sell this brand, what is the kind of advertising we'll have to adopt? What's the kind of marketing strategy we'll have to adopt in order to sell it to this kind of a culture? So these are very intense studies which are made by, companies, right? So then you need to sort of outline the skeleton of your essay. And suppose I change the topic once again, and I look at the value and adaptability of the banana as an ingredient in a range of menus. Suppose you are from the hotel industry and you want to make improvisations to your menu and you want to consider if banana can be introduced at various levels, then this is the question that you have in your mind, and then how will you do a study of that? How you do a paper on this? So you'll write your plan using headings for main points and subheadings under them, such as evidence and examples are using to support each point. Use heading for main points and subheadings. These headings are extremely important because they give you immediately a kind of a bird's eye view of what the paragraph is going to do. And what's the kind of explanation you're going to use, what's the kind of example you will use, what's the supporting evidence you're going to use, what's the concluding sentence data that you will use, right? And each paragraph comes in implicit connection to the earlier one. Paragraphs, they should be transitory sentences, and paragraphs sort of evolve from one paragraph into another, referring back to a previous paragraph, moving on to the next paragraph, right? So, as an example for the introduction to this paper, you will have as an introduction, maybe you talk about the wide range of uses that you can put the banana to. It can be used in sweet and savory dishes. It can be cooked. It can be, it could be raw or cooked. It could be the main dish, or it could be a dessert. It could be a snack. It could be a beverage. The low cost of it. So that could be summed up in the introduction. Then in the body of the paragraphs, you could have the desert origins of the banana, international uses. Then you could put examples of the banana split, the trifle. Then you might have, you can look at the beverages, the smoothies, the cocktails that can be made from bananas. You can also look at how bananas can be a very good children's snack, and how, because it's a children's snack, what kind of TV shows, promotions could be done. And you can have umpteen ideas. If spinach can be sold through Popeye, why can't banana be sold through a banana man, right? Something like that. And the cost, available in all seasons, in Australia or in India or wherever. And then conclusion could sum up the international use, the abundance, the versatility, and the good value, and the worthwhile ingredient, etc., etc. Right? So how do you draft research reports versus essays? So basically, you need to read research reports and write the essay, and therefore it's important to understand both. So for the research report, any report will have the following sections. You'll have the preliminaries, you'll have the main text, you'll have the end matter. So the preliminaries will consist of the title page, and this is the essay, right? Preliminaries will have the title page, the main text will have the introduction, the main body, the conclusion, and then the references. You will find that the references are absolutely crucial in everything. Now, suppose you are a student, you are a postgraduate student, as I'm told some of you are, then the title page should contain information to enable your readers, that is your teacher, to identify exactly what piece of work this is. It should include the group's name, the course, the title of the assignment, And when you come to the main text, then the main text has three main parts. It has an introduction, a main body, a conclusion, and then the introduction consists of two parts. It should include a few general statements about the subject matter, such as what we saw in the banana. Now, banana is a fun topic, guys. No, please don't follow my advice. To provide a background to your essay and to attract the reader's attention. It should try to explain why you're writing the essay. It may include a definition of terms in the context of the essay, etc. That would be the introduction. And then it should also contain an indication of how the topic is going to be tackled in order to specifically address the question, right? So the introduction will introduce the main idea, the main purpose of writing it. It gives a few general statements. It will also attempt to do it as attractively as possible to persuade the reader to enter into the essay. It might also attempt a definition of terms to sort of give an understanding of how the subject is approached in a variety of different studies. And then, of course, it will also give an indication of how your essay is going to tackle it in order to, connect it to the main body. The main body, of course, will have is based upon analysis. So the main body consists of several paragraphs of ideas and arguments, together with illustrations or examples which offer an analysis of the selected topic. And these paragraphs are linked in order to connect these ideas, right? And the purpose of the essay is an analysis, and the reader must be able to follow the development of the argument, the analysis as it is being made, right? So your evidences, the illustrations, the examples, which support, your ideas and your arguments, and the linkages of these different ideas, and therefore finally to analyze the data from a particular thing. And the conclusion of the essay, of course, it includes the writer's final points. It should recall the issues raised in the introduction and draw together main points made in the points made in the main body. And it explains the overall significance of the conclusions. That is, what are the general points that can be drawn from the essay as a whole. It should clearly indicate to the reader that the essay is finished and leave a clear impression that the purpose of the essay has been achieved. And there you end the paper. Now, this is where I think, as a teacher and as a student of language, I have some examples of how it's a requirement. I think that as far as academic writing goes, and of course there are many experiments in academic writings, especially in literature, where many writers experiment with the tone and the language. But yet, at least for young upcoming academics as well as students, it is, I could not emphasize more, because this is something which I require from my PhD students as well. I will, do insist upon a slightly more formal tone and language, because academic writing is a formal affair. It is formal. And very importantly, you need to be as restrained as possible, as objective as possible, and therefore no exaggeration. This is an extremely important point. As young scholars feel very, very called upon to highlight the point that they are making, highlight the thesis. But the better impact it has, suppose it is done in a more restrained fashion. So no exaggeration. And it's always better to be impersonal. Do not use the autobiographical I, and do not use the first person. Does not leave a very good impression. You do not want to show yourself as, a very egotistic kind of a person. It's always better to efface one's own personality from the topic which one is attempting, because one wants to give an example, one wants to give the idea that one is a very serious scholar who will look at something objectively in as impartial a way as possible. And therefore, the use of the first person pronouns is absolutely strictly, I think, to be restrained, not to be used. And be very direct, though we have seen how language, has this great capacity for play, for irony, for sarcasm, for humor, for pathos, in any which way you can use it. But in a piece of academic writing, I think it makes greater sense to be as clear, as transparent, and as Harini would like to say, as much like a pane of glass as it is possible to. Try to keep your language as transparent. And again, towards the end, even though you might come up with a conclusion, do not be very emphatic about that conclusion. Do not say, okay, this is it and nothing else. It's no final judgment on that. You should always be open to say, okay, this particular study seems to suggest that this is what the outcome is, this is what the finding is, this is what the result of the analysis is. However, you can always indicate the scope for a differing point of view, for an ability to be open to engage with, arguing, accepting the other's person's opinion. Of course, you're quite strongly, you're holding on to your own opinion, but you can be open to looking at, considering, or at least engaging with the discussion of another opinion. So no final judgment call in your writing. So, okay, right, guys. So what does formal writing look like? What are the examples, right? Okay. So if you focus on the issue and not on the writer, right? Not me, Rohini, as the writer, but the issue. Suppose I'm studying, I'm studying what? Shall I give you an idea of my own topic? Yeah, suppose I'm looking at Northeastern writers. And if I want to say that Northeast writing is deeply engaged with the question of the environment and sustainable environment, I do not want to make myself enter the scene. What I will look at is give, in a more, objective fashion, keep my writing objective, and that impersonality, in fact, will make it more convincing. Now, suppose it's a paper in say sales. It is better, instead of saying I will argue in this essay that, better than that it will be to say it will be argued that the benefit of sales promotion outweigh the disadvantages. So it's a much more formal, a more courteous, a more polite way of putting forward, what you're saying. And you need to choose words with precise meaning. Suppose, please do avoid words with vague meanings, right? Doesn't mean that if you're courteous that you will be vague. No, those two things don't go together. You need to be clear and yet courteous. So avoid words with vague meaning. So for instance, if you say the writer looks at the issue with, or the writer examines the issue, the second option, which is the writer examines the issue, is far more formal and far more precise than the previous one. Looks at the issue with is slightly convoluted and slightly imprecise. So what are the formal choices? It could be he states, he maintains, he argues. Instead of he says, he talks about. These would be the more informal ways and rather imprecise ways of saying things. And as I said earlier, excuse me, guys. Yeah. As I said earlier, it's good to make your claims tentative rather than definite. Keep always a door open for the discussion, to agree or disagree with somebody else's ideas. You're free to disagree as long as you do it with courtesy and you do it with logic. And of course, it's very unlikely that there's only one possible conclusion that's there on any subject. We are, a huge number of people, and there are always different ways of looking at things. I always give the example of Anekantavada, right? 10 blind men looking at an elephant, and each of them will hold on to one thing and say, this is what the elephant is. It's not the right thing. The reality is so multifaceted. If at all, excuse me, if at all we are able only to hold on to one aspect of that reality, not all of it. So, you could say, instead of saying television viewing causes reading problems in childhood, you could say excessive television viewing may be a contributing cause of some cases of reading problems in childhood, which may be a more tentative and more acceptable way of putting forward a finding. Another important thing to remember is that of the flow of information in paragraphs. Paragraphs are usually structured as there's a topic sentence, then that would be the main idea, and that would be the first sentence per paragraph. Then there would be a supporting sentences, which gives details that expands the ideas, and then a concluding sentence, which rounds off that idea. Just as your paper has a conclusion, so too paragraphs are made up of a topic sentence, a supporting sentence, and a concluding sentence. Prabha, am I repeating points that the others have made?
No, ma'am, not at all. But as you were coughing, I wanted to say, if you want to conclude, you can. It's not a problem because
No, I'll be fine.
Like,
okay. I just
speaking for 2 hours is really tough. I understand that. So no need to stretch it to 2 hours. So if you want to conclude, please conclude. No problem at all, ma'am.
Right. No, not a problem. I'll just quickly finish this. So the flow of information paragraphs, you also need to have linking words such as firstly and finally, or on the other hand. These are examples of some words that you can use. And it's also good to have phrases for transition, phrases for emphasis, phrases for counterpoint. These are very standard phrases used in scholarly essays. So what are the phrases for transition you can have? Regarding, admittedly, consequently, as a result, ultimately. All these are good transition phrases. You could have some points for emphasis, such as moreover, in fact, additionally, as a matter of fact, indeed, etc., etc. And this is very important. Then phrases for counterpoint, that there could be people who are disagreeing with you, and you need to sort of bring it to the table, and you say conversely, this and such, this study has proven this, or on the other hand, somebody else might think that, or however, or nevertheless, or notwithstanding. These are the different phrases for counterpoint that you might want to use. Now, my presentation had a special emphasis on referencing, because that is the Achilles heel, I think, of all academic studies. The more neatly done and tightly done referencing there is in an academic paper, the better impression it conveys to your possible peer reviewers or to your readers of the quality of your mind and of the quality of your research. What does referencing do? Referencing actually shows the reader how well you have done a literature survey of what you're trying to establish, how deep has been the literature review that you've undertaken, how much has been the reading, how wholesome and how comprehensive and how in-depth has been your reading on a particular subject. So basically, that's why you reference, because these are the different readings I've done, and based on these readings, these are the points I have to make. So what does referencing mean? Definitely, it means that basically you're building upon the work done by other scholars in this pursuit of knowledge. And should I include references to my own work? Of course you should. Suppose you are an established authority on any one particular area and you have done earlier studies, of course you should include your own work, but then it's not very proper to keep drawing attention to your work and not other people's work, which is again a drawback. You don't want to appear as if you're not aware that other people have done work. And then how do I reference my work? So those are also these questions that you might tackle. So what does referencing mean? Obviously, it is acknowledging the ideas, information, which is the work of other people. And why should I include references? Because you want to acknowledge the work of others, you want to prove evidence of your own research, you want to illustrate a particular point, you want to support an argument or a theory, or you want to allow others to locate the sources you have used, because you might have come across this source from some very different kind of way. And suppose you're doing something in medicine and you embark upon a literature survey. I don't know how many of the medicine students here, practitioners here, have read Siddharth Mukherjee, a doctor, but also somebody deeply embedded in literature and philosophy. So, Siddharth Mukherjee, through his literary studies, through his historical studies, has been able to enrich, the history of medicine. So, so through his bibliography, one comes to know the sources that, this is very exciting sources in fact, the more established a scholar is, the more quickly she will look at the bibliography to find out, oh, what exactly are the sources that this scholar has used. And of course, this hardly needs any saying. I know all of you are very serious academics, so please, plagiarism is absolutely out. Okay? And of course, I think I saw the earlier speaker also speak about the different styles of references. I don't want to do this point again. The MLA or the APA, Chicago, and there are many others. Yeah. So is this all, Prabha, has this been done earlier, referencing while writing and citations, in-text citations and bibliographies and all of that? Prabha?
Ma'am, sir briefed yesterday about
Yes, ma'am.
citation.
Yeah. Tell me,
All this
ma'am.
is done?
Sorry.
All this is done?
Which one, ma'am?
All these citations, referencing, Kavya tells me it's already done. Referencing while writing, citing references in the text.
No, very, very small, a kind of small talk was there, but it was in terms of writing manuscript by Dr. Mani Nepal.
Right.
Yeah, but you see, ma'am, what you are presenting, very little overlap I'm able to see with
Okay.
other lectures.
All right.
So yeah, it's new only. You
Okay.
can go on.
Yeah, sure. So, so these referencing while writing, how do we do the referencing? So let me just, how do I reference my work? These are the different styles. You could use whatever is the style is the most accepted style in your particular discipline. For instance, in literature, we use the MLA style sheet. But I do know the social sciences uses Chicago or Harvard, which is almost the same with some differences. Right. So how do you reference while writing? So references will be cited in your work in two places, where the source is referred to in the text. In the text, where the source is referred to, it's called citation. That is when you cite some other work. And then towards the end of your paper or your assignment for a student, it is in the list, in the bibliography, in the list of references towards the end, right? So in-text references, when you're citing the author in the text, it is the author's surname and the year of publication, which are inserted as according to the following the examples. Suppose you're giving this statement: dogs were the first animals to be domesticated. You will put the author's name followed by a comma followed by the year of publication, right? But if the author's name occurs naturally, suppose you want to say Sheldrake asserts that dogs were the first animals to be domesticated, then you will put the year of publication because the author's name is already in the sentence. So you don't need to repeat the author's name in the in-text citation, right? And what is it? How does it happen when you quote excerpts from a selected work? So if you quote directly from a source, you must insert the author's name, date of publication, and the page number of the quotation. So in case you're directly from a source, if you're quoting the author and not summarizing the author in your own words, you'll say Sheldrake, the year and the page. And suppose you give the name of the author, then you put the date within brackets soon after the author's name and the page number at the end of the sentence. These are the different ways that in-text references are made. Suppose your source has two authors, then of course you'll include both the author's name followed by the year, and in the end of the sentence will have the page number. And suppose there are three or more authors, then you will of course include only the first author, the name of the first author, and then say et al. Followed by a full stop to indicate, which is an abbreviation of et alia, which means and others in Latin. So if it's quoting from Klein et al., so you're not quoting all the names of all the authors, right? Suppose you're citing works by the same author written in the same year. Okay. Suppose Sheldrake has two texts written in the same year. Then what you will do, you'll name text A. The one that has come slightly earlier will be A, and the one that has come later in the same year as B. But suppose they belong to different years, then you have no problems because it could be Sheldrake, or in this case, Ayala 1965 and Ayala 1966, if it is two different years, right? And while citing, now this is a very interesting example. Suppose you have come across a quotation on the particular detail that you want to give, but that quotation has been cited in some other author's work, and you have not been able to directly read that quotation in the original, then how do you cite it? What do you do in this case? You are citing the second source where you got the quote, but you will include the name and author, the name of the author and the date of publication of the original source in the text. And of course, the secondary source alone will be listed in your references. uh, you know, uh, the secondary source also will be listed in your references over and above the original source from where you got that quotation, right? So suppose this is if Chef notes that Nintendo invested heavily in advertising, which means that Chef has quoted Nintendo, but you will, you will mention where you have seen Chef's, quoting Nintendo, where Chef has noted it. So you will say it is cited in Klein et al. In this page. But in your references, you will have a reference both to Chef as well as to Klein. No? So both these people will be indicated in the references. Now, what about writing a bibliography or the list of references? In some, journals will want you to say bibliography. Some others ask you to, bibliography is more inclusive. It could include what you have read, while the list of references will include only those texts which have been referred to. So different journals have different kinds of, referencing patterns, referencing styles, and then you will have to follow that journals, right? So the list of references appears at the end of your work and gives full details of everything that you've cited, in the alphabetical order by the author's name. And please note that this is a student mistake that many students make. Do not number the items in references or in bibliography, right? How do you reference for printed books? You should reference it by using the following format and punctuation: author or editor's name and initials, full stop, comma, year of publication within brackets, then the title of book, including subtitles, which is in italics, then edition, if it's applicable, first edition, second edition, etc., the place of publication, followed by a colon, and then the name of the publication. This is the way printed books are to be referenced in the list of references. And how are books to a reference to a book with one author? Then you'll, for instance, you'll have the name of the author, comma, initial, full stop, comma, the date of the publication within brackets, then the title in italics, full stop, then the place of publication followed by colon to the publisher's name followed by a full stop. A similar kind of a thing with a book to two authors, both authors and both initials mentioned. So print journals and newspapers, will have their own technique. I think it's okay. I think you will all, it depends on the journal. I don't need to read through all of this. If there are any doubts, you can ask me and I can let you know. Basically, print journals need to be looked at in this way. So the name followed by comma, initial followed by full stop, followed by comma, the date of publication within brackets, full stop. Then, of course, the title of the paper is never italicized. The journal, the name of the journal of the paper, the name of the journal is italicized, and you give full stop, then volume number, all the details of the publication, which are given in a journal thing, right? Each journal has its own, more or less the same, but you will, of course, also indicate when it is accessed. And the details are slightly different because it gives you very clearly online and available from the HTTP and the date when you have accessed that particular book, right? Websites, web pages have their own format and the style of how they are to be referenced. Online journals too. There's no point in my talking about it because, these are things that you will pick up. Now, this is something which I saw Professor Nagendra, talk about, and so I won't repeat that. Of course, revision is a crucial step. As I can't tell you how important revision is. You have to be absolutely ready to abandon ship and say large parts of your paper, are to be totally bunked and junked and not to be used, and you're ready to redo it, because revision actually means looking at everything with a fresh perspective and with a very critical eye. Of course, all of us tend to get deeply in love with what we have written. We are very loath to abandon it, to junk it. But if you're working on a book and if you go to publishing house, your editor will be very stern with you and say, no ma'am, this cannot. As somebody who's worked with editors, I can tell you that editors are extremely stern, and they'll say, okay, this has to be changed and that has to be changed. They'll not allow you to keep a paragraph however much you love that paragraph. So you need to be willing to reconsider the whole report and essay and framework of its argument and the supporting references if some of the references do not really fall in line. And of course, the next thing is editing, which is a crucial step of the process, requiring a check on the precision and style in grammar, syntax, clarity, language, and concision of the text. Need to be very precise and concise, and no superfluous fat, right? No superfluous cladding on the essay. It needs to be absolutely, spare and precise in its clarity. And of course, proofreading is absolutely essential. If my advice to all my PhD students is to do a stint of proofreading in a publishing house, because that gives you a kind of preparation that nothing else does. I had the privilege of being a proofreader in a publishing house when I was doing my postgraduate studies, and I know what an exacting task it is, because you are forced to look at things with very sharp eyes for typos, for inadvertent errors in writing. For proofreading is absolutely crucial in the correction of punctuation, capitalization, spellings, etc. An absolutely essential part of the process. This last bit, many essays get redone, books get redone when you're in this exercise of revision, editing, and proofreading. Right. So guys, I come to the end now, and just to sum up, to tell you that please keep my initial bit on language close to your heart, because I know academic writing many others will come and do, but I do want all of you to be infected with what I think for life infected with, this virus of finding joy in language and in finding excitement in literary text, because you're born into a language. And you see, the surest sign that something is not all right with you is seen in the way you use language, in the kind of corruptions that come to language when you are not well, right? Mental illness, for instance, signifies first in some kind of a abnormal use of language. So it's as close. Language and the human mind are as closely interwired together. And no wonder then that the earliest sign of cultures, even one searches for the language it spoke or it recorded in. So please keep that close to your mind. And academic writing, I'm sure I hope I have been useful, but I'm sure there are other scholars who have come and done stuff with you. But I just would like to conclude saying that as academics, we are all engaged in producing knowledge, and that knowledge, of course, shows itself in the form of academic writing, which is absolutely an integral aspect of research-based academic career. And the planning, the outlining, drafting of essays, reports, which are supported by sound referencing, are important skills that are crucial to academic writing. And incisive academic writing is, of course, the reflection of a sound academic mind. I just want to wish you all wonderful academic careers, rest of your life. And if anybody wants to sort of ask questions, you're most welcome to do it.
Yeah, if anybody has any question, can ask.
Yeah,
it was really
one last slide.
Session,
thank you very much. Thanks to
thank you, ma'am. It was really
for inviting me, and thanks to IIT Tirupati, and many thanks to you guys, participants, for putting up with my excursions when I took you by force and tried to make you see things which apparently were not connected to academic writing, but as a teacher of literature and of language, I thought it was important. I thought it was important that I draw your attention. So please forgive me if I have taken you beyond the boundaries of what was earmarked for me by IIT Tirupati. And Prabha, please, I beg your indulgence.
No, no, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for
Thank you for
accepting
inviting
our
me.
invitation, ma'am. So I now request Dr. Kavya Saini to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. And it is really a privilege for me to get this opportunity to thank ma'am, because you know what I felt in the entire session, that I think somebody is on is not muted.
Yeah, muted already.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
please go
sir.
ahead, madam.
I really wanted to, I really felt there is a quote which we always, read for teachers, that good teacher never teaches from a book, but from a heart, from her heart. And that was completely visible in the entire session of Rohini ma'am's. And, like I have to switch off my camera for a couple of minutes just because there are some other calls as well. So I did not wanted to leave. And the best part was that ma'am was not aware that what stream everybody was here, and from beginning she first created an interest in all the participants by making getting them involved in all the talks, and then she took to the session so that we can also relate that what ma'am really wanted to. And it was a wonderful and a knowledgeful session, ma'am. And I'm really glad that I'm part of this session and I could attend this completely. And I deliberately, delayed my few of my other works because I wanted to sit in silent and listen to this lesson. Thank you so much, ma'am. And
Thank you, Kavya.
really appreciate your teaching style, and I'm very happy that I could, gain knowledge from you, Rohini ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Kavya. Thanks for your interventions. Thanks.
And thank you, Prabha sir, for getting ma'am on board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
All the best to you all. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
So we'll be meeting again at 2:30. I'm ending this session now. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Now, next session on 2:30, na?
Yeah, at 2:30. Yes.
Right.
Pankaj?